What if I told you that in Scotland, there are castles where bedsheets are ripped away by invisible hands, where ghostly soldiers still march across empty courtyards, and where a cursed skull will scream if you try to move it? These aren't just legends. Tonight, we're exploring 15 of Scotland's most haunted castles, places where visitors still report terrifying encounters. And the final castle, maybe the most disturbing of them all. 1. Edinburgh Castle. Edinburgh. I have watched over this rock for centuries. Long before the city lights of Edinburgh spread across the valley below, this fortress stood alone against the wind, its black stone walls rising from the jagged peak of Castle Rock, like a crown carved from shadow. Armies marched beneath these gates. Prisoners screamed within these walls. And when the battles ended, the silence that followed was never truly empty. You may hear it when you first walk through the castle at dusk. The wind moves strangely here, slipping through ancient corridors and along the narrow paths between towers. At times it carries the faint echo of drums beating somewhere deep within the stone. Slow, hollow, as if a soldier still marches through the darkness long after losing his head in war. Many who wander these halls claim to hear the sound of distant pipes, as well melodies drifting through tunnels beneath the fortress. Legends speak of a young piper sent into the underground passages centuries ago, ordered to play his pipe so soldiers above could follow the sound. But the music suddenly stopped, and the boy was never seen again. Yet sometimes, on quiet nights, the pipes begin to play once more. Down in the old dungeons, the air grows colder than the Scottish night outside. Chains clatter against stone, though no prisoners remain, and unseen footsteps echo through the cells, where captured soldiers once waited for their fate. Some say the fortress simply remembers its violent past. Others say the prisoners of Edinburgh Castle never truly left. And if you listen closely while standing beneath its ancient towers, you may hear something moving in the darkness below your feet. Still marching, still waiting, still trapped within the stone forever. 2. Mary King's Close. Edinburgh. I remember when the streets above still breathed with life. Merchants shouted through the narrow alleys of Edinburgh. Lanterns glowed in the windows, and the stone steps of Mary King's Close were worn smooth by thousands of footsteps every day. Families lived packed together in tall, crowded buildings where laughter, arguments, and music drifted through the air like smoke from the chimneys. Then the sickness came. The plague moved silently at first, slipping through the close like an invisible shadow. One house fell quiet, then another, until the streets filled with the sound of coughing and desperate prayers. People whispered that the dead were piling up faster than the city could bury them. Fear spread faster than the disease. Soon the doors of Mary King's Close were sealed. The narrow street disappeared beneath new buildings, entombed under layers of stone as the city tried to forget the nightmare hidden below. But we never left. Down here, the air still carries the damp chill of the underground passages. The walls sweat with cold moisture, and sometimes visitors catch a faint, rotten smell drifting through the dark corridors, an odor that has no clear source. They say shadows move here when no one is standing nearby. Footsteps echo through empty chambers, and sometimes there is a child. Her name was Annie. Visitors often leave small toys in one small room beneath the city, hoping to comfort the lonely spirit of the little girl who once lived here and died during the plague. Some claim they feel a small hand tug gently at their clothes. Others hear quiet sobbing in the darkness. Because beneath the busy streets of Edinburgh, Mary King's Close still waits, sealed away with the voices of those who never escaped. 3. Glamis Castle. Angus. They say every castle holds secrets, but the secrets of Glamis Castle were never meant to be discovered. Rising from the quiet countryside of Angus, its towering turrets and ancient stone walls seem almost peaceful beneath the Scottish sky. By day, the castle looks like something from a storybook. Golden towers, quiet gardens, and long corridors filled with portraits of the Lyon family who have lived here for centuries. But when night falls, the castle begins to remember. I walked these halls long ago, when candlelight flickered against the walls and whispers moved through the corridors like restless wind. There were rooms in this castle that no servant was ever allowed to enter, doors sealed behind thick stone, windows that existed on the outside, but nowhere within. People spoke quietly of what might be hidden there. Some said a monstrous child of the Lyon bloodline, was locked away forever inside the castle walls. Others believed a cursed nobleman, the so-called vampire earl, still roamed secret chambers that no living guest had ever seen. But the castle holds more than hidden rooms. Sometimes visitors glimpse a pale woman drifting silently through the chapel, known as the Grey Lady. Others see the White Lady gliding along the corridors, her presence so cold that the air itself seems to freeze. Yet the most chilling omen comes from outside the castle gates. On certain nights, when tragedy is near, witnesses claim to see a ghostly carriage rolling silently toward the castle through the darkness. No horses breathe, no driver holds the reins. But inside the carriage, something waits. Because in Glamis Castle, the past never stays buried for long. 4. Greyfriars Kirkyard, Edinburgh. Most graveyards are quiet places, but Greyfriars Kirkyard has never known true peace. The cemetery lies hidden behind ancient stone walls in the heart of Edinburgh, where crooked gravestones lean over dark soil that has held the dead for centuries. By day, it feels solemn but calm, a resting place where history sleeps beneath moss-covered markers and crumbling mausoleums. But when the shadows grow longer, the air here begins to change. Visitors often feel it first as a sudden chill moving through the narrow paths between graves. The wind slips through broken iron gates and tangled branches, carrying faint whispers that seem to come from nowhere at all. And deep inside the graveyard stands a place many refuse to approach: the Black Mausoleum. This sealed tomb belongs to Sir George Mackenzie, the ruthless judge who condemned hundreds of Covenanters to death in the 17th century. Many believe the spirits of those he persecuted never forgave him, and that his restless anger now erupts from the tomb like a violent storm. People who wander too close sometimes report something far worse than a cold breeze: unseen hands grabbing their arms, sharp scratches appearing on their skin without warning, sudden waves of panic so powerful that visitors collapse or run screaming from the graveyard. Yet not all spirits here are cruel. Near the entrance of the kirkyard rests the grave of a man once guarded by the small dog who loved him beyond death. For years after his master passed away, the loyal terrier, Greyfriars Bobby, refused to leave the grave. Some say the faithful dog still watches over the cemetery today, because in Greyfriars Kirkyard, the dead are never truly alone. 5. South Bridge Vaults, Edinburgh. Beneath the busy streets of Edinburgh lies a place the city tried to forget. Most people walking across South Bridge never realize what exists below their feet. Cars pass overhead, tourists wander through the historic streets, and the city moves forward as it always has. But far beneath the stone arches of the bridge is a dark labyrinth of chambers where sunlight has not reached for centuries. The South Bridge Vaults. I remember when these rooms were alive with noise. In the late 18th century, the vaults became a hidden world beneath the city, filled with taverns, gambling dens, and places where desperate people came to disappear from the law. Criminals, smugglers, and body snatchers walked these narrow halls, their lanterns casting long shadows against damp stone walls. Violence was common here. Arguments turned into knife fights, deals ended in betrayal, and more than once, bodies vanished into the darkness, where no one above would ever hear the screams. When the vaults were finally abandoned, the city believed the darkness had been sealed away, but the silence down here never lasted. Visitors descending into the vaults today often feel something brush against them in the narrow corridors. Cold fingers seem to tug at their clothes where no one stands. Sometimes a distant cry echoes through the chambers, a scream that fades as quickly as it appears. Ghost tour guides tell stories of people who panic without warning, running from empty rooms as if something unseen had just stepped close behind them. Because deep beneath Edinburgh, the South Bridge Vaults still hold the memories of those who died in darkness, and some of them may still be waiting there. 6. Holyrood Palace, Edinburgh. I remember the night the palace turned silent. Holyrood Palace stands proudly at the end of Edinburgh's Royal Mile, its towers rising beside the shadow of Arthur's Seat like a monument to royal power and centuries of Scottish history. By day, its grand halls shine with polished floors, tapestries, and portraits of kings and queens who once ruled within these walls. But the palace remembers one night above all others. It was March of 1566. I was standing in the private chambers of Mary, Queen of Scots, when the doors burst open. Her trusted secretary, David Rizzio, had been dining beside her table only moments before. The queen was pregnant, frightened, and surrounded by men who had already made their decision. They dragged Rizzio across the room. The queen screamed as the knives fell again and again until the chamber floor ran dark with blood. They stabbed him more than 50 times before his body finally lay still. But some say the blood never truly vanished. Servants and visitors have whispered for centuries that faint stains sometimes reappear on the floor where the murder took place, no matter how often the room is cleaned. The shadow of that night seems to return, and sometimes the palace echoes with footsteps long after the doors close. People claim to hear hushed voices drifting through the royal apartments. Others say they see a pale figure in old clothing moving through the corridors, as if trapped in a moment that refuses to end. Because in Holyrood Palace, history is not always quiet. Some nights, the past rises again, and the echoes of betrayal still whisper through the royal halls. 7. Culzean Castle, Ayrshire. I first heard the music long before I ever saw the castle. Culzean Castle rises high above the rugged cliffs of Ayrshire, its grand stone towers staring out across the restless waters of the Firth of Clyde. By day, the place looks almost peaceful, surrounded by green forests and crashing waves that echo far below the cliffs. But when the night wind begins to climb the stone walls, the castle becomes something else entirely. Visitors often hear it first as a faint sound carried across the sea air, a melody, soft, distant, played on pipes that no living musician holds. The tune drifts slowly through the grounds and along the cliffside paths, rising and falling like a lonely signal lost in the dark. Many who try to follow the sound swear it vanishes the moment they get too close, as if the unseen piper knows he is being watched. Some believe he was once sent into hidden tunnels beneath the castle centuries ago, ordered to play his pipes so the sound could guide those above. But the music suddenly stopped, and the piper was never seen again. Yet the castle holds more than a lost musician. Inside the great halls, footsteps echo in empty corridors where no servants walk anymore. Some visitors claim to see a young girl wandering the rooms late at night, her pale face filled with silent fear, as if she is searching for someone who never came to help her. And along the castle's oval staircase, strange sounds often rise through the stone. Not footsteps, not wind, but distant wails, echoing upward from somewhere deep inside the walls of Culzean Castle. 8. Fyvie Castle, Aberdeenshire. Fyvie Castle has stood for more than 800 years. From a distance, its tall towers and pale stone walls appear almost regal, rising peacefully above the rolling fields of Aberdeenshire. Generations of noble families have lived here, filling its halls with music, feasts, and the quiet rituals of aristocratic life. But some say the castle was cursed long before most of them arrived. Legend tells of the mysterious prophet Thomas the Rhymer, who once visited this land centuries ago. As the story goes, he warned that Fyvie Castle would never truly prosper until 3 stones hidden somewhere within its walls were returned to their rightful place. Those stones were never found, and so the curse remained. Over time, strange events began to unfold within the castle. Servants whispered about doors that rattled violently in the middle of the night, as if someone unseen were pounding desperately from the other side. They called her the Green Lady. Witnesses describe a ghostly woman dressed in a long green gown, stained with dark patches that resemble dried blood. Her figure glides silently through the corridors before stopping suddenly beside bedroom doors, striking them with an eerie rhythmic knocking. Those who hear it often believe the sound carries a terrible warning, because after the knocking, tragedy is said to follow. Yet the Green Lady is not the only spirit said to linger here. In the highest tower of Fyvie Castle, some claim to see the figure of a young drummer boy standing guard in the shadows. His body remains, but his head is missing, as though lost in some forgotten battle. And still, the faint sound of distant drumming sometimes echoes through the stone halls of Fyvie Castle, long after midnight. 9. Glencoe Massacre Site, Glencoe. The valley looks peaceful when you first arrive. Tall mountains rise like silent giants on either side, their dark slopes covered in mist that drifts slowly across the narrow glen. Streams run through the grasslands, and the wind whispers through the rocky passes of the Scottish Highlands, as if carrying the echoes of centuries. But Glencoe is not just another beautiful valley. I remember the night everything changed. It was February 1692 when the soldiers arrived. They came as guests of the MacDonald clan, welcomed into their homes during the cold Highland winter. For nearly 2 weeks they shared food, warmth, and laughter beside the same fires. Then the orders came. Before dawn, the soldiers turned on their hosts. Doors were kicked open. Families were dragged from their beds. The quiet valley filled with the sound of screams and gunfire as the MacDonalds were hunted through their own homes and across the frozen hills. Some were killed where they stood. Others fled into the snow-covered mountains, where the cold finished what the blades had begun. More than 300 years have passed since that night, but Glencoe has never truly forgotten. Travelers walking through the valley sometimes report hearing distant cries carried on the wind, especially when thick fog rolls down from the mountains. Some claim to see shadowy figures moving across the hillsides, men in old Highland dress disappearing into the mist before they can be approached. Locals whisper that the spirits of the MacDonalds still wander the glen, still angry, still betrayed. And when the fog grows thick in Glencoe, some say you are not walking alone in the valley anymore. 10. Duntroon Castle, Argyll. The sea has always whispered secrets to Duntroon Castle. Standing alone on a narrow stretch of land along the rugged coast of Argyll, the ancient stone fortress watches silently over the grey waters of Loch Crinan. Waves crash softly against the shore below its walls, and seabirds circle overhead like restless guardians of a place that has seen centuries of bloodshed. But the quiet landscape hides a darker story. Long ago, when Scotland's clans still fought bitter wars for land and power, Duntroon Castle became the center of a brutal betrayal. One night, while the castle's defenders slept, an enemy clan launched a surprise attack. Steel clashed in the darkness as warriors stormed the walls, turning the quiet stronghold into a battlefield filled with screams and fire. Many died that night, but the most tragic story belongs to a young woman who lived within the castle walls. According to legend, she had fallen deeply in love with a man from a rival clan, a romance forbidden in a time when loyalty meant everything. When their secret was discovered, the consequences were deadly. Her lover was murdered, and the woman herself was left wandering the castle in grief until her heart finally broke. Today, people say her spirit still lingers here. Visitors sometimes report seeing a pale figure dressed in green drifting silently through the ruins, staring out toward the sea as if waiting for someone who will never return. And on certain stormy nights, strange sounds echo across the grounds. Not the wind, but the distant clash of swords and the roar of phantom warriors fighting a battle that ended centuries ago. 11. Hermitage Castle, Roxburghshire. Hermitage Castle does not welcome visitors. Even from a distance, the fortress feels different from other Scottish castles. Its thick, dark stone walls rise from the lonely countryside of Roxburghshire, like a fortress built for war rather than comfort. The land around it lies quiet and empty, as if the earth itself remembers something terrible that once happened here. For centuries, people have called it the most sinister castle in Scotland, and perhaps they are right. I remember the day Mary, Queen of Scots, rode across these lonely fields to reach this place. It was 1566, and she had traveled miles on horseback to visit James Hepburn, the Earl of Bothwell, who lay injured inside these walls. Their meeting would become one of the most infamous moments in Scottish history. But the castle had already been steeped in darkness long before the Queen arrived. Deep inside its cold chambers, prisoners were once dragged into stone rooms where torture was used to force confessions and punish enemies. The walls heard screams that no one outside the castle ever spoke about again. Some say those screams never truly stopped. Visitors who wander into the old torture chamber often report sudden blasts of freezing air rushing through the room, even when the rest of the castle feels still. Others claim to see shadowy figures watching silently from the corners. One spirit said to haunt the castle is Alexander Ramsay, a nobleman imprisoned here centuries ago, starved and abandoned within these walls. His anger is believed to linger long after his death, and sometimes, when night falls over Hermitage Castle, people swear they hear footsteps echoing through the empty halls, as if someone from the past is still walking these rooms. 12. Inverary Castle, Argyll. Inverary Castle rises quietly along the shores of Loch Fyne, its tall towers and elegant stone walls reflecting in the dark waters. like something lifted from a royal fairy tale. By day, the castle appears peaceful, surrounded by green hills and soft Scottish mist drifting across the landscape. Visitors walk through its grand halls admiring ancient portraits, polished floors, and the quiet dignity of centuries of noble history. But when night settles over Argyll, the castle begins to feel very different. Long after the visitors leave and the lights grow dim, the great halls fall into an unnatural silence. It is during these late hours that the first sound is sometimes heard: soft strings echoing through the empty corridors. A harp. No musician is ever found. For generations, the Campbell family who lived in the castle have whispered about the mysterious ghostly harpist. According to legend, the faint music appears shortly before a death occurs within the family, as though some unseen spirit is announcing tragedy before it arrives. The melody drifts slowly through the castle's stone chambers, beautiful yet deeply unsettling. But the harpist is not the only restless spirit here. In the shadowed corridors, some claim to see the figure of a young maid who once served the household centuries ago, wrongly accused of a crime she did not commit. She was executed within the castle grounds. Now her pale figure is said to wander the halls late at night, and sometimes, when the castle clock strikes midnight, small glowing lights begin to drift silently through the great hall, as if the castle itself is still watching. 13. Stirling Castle. Stirling. Perched high on a volcanic crag above the town of Stirling, Stirling Castle dominates the landscape like a silent sentinel of Scotland's turbulent past. Its thick stone walls once guarded kings and queens, witnessed brutal sieges, and served as a royal residence for centuries, including the childhood home of Mary, Queen of Scots. But many believe the castle never truly emptied when the living left. After sunset, the vast courtyards and ramparts grow eerily still. Guards and visitors have long reported strange footsteps echoing through corridors that should be empty, as if unseen soldiers still patrol the fortress. The most famous spirits here are the Green Lady and the Pink Lady. The Green Lady is said to be the ghost of a loyal servant who once attended the young Mary, Queen of Scots. According to legend, she saved the queen during a palace fire, warning her just moments before flames spread through the chambers. Though the queen survived, the servant perished. Since then, witnesses claim a woman in a green dress can sometimes be seen walking along the castle ramparts or appearing suddenly in hallways before vanishing into the stone walls. Some believe her presence is still protective, watching over the castle centuries later. The Pink Lady, however, carries a darker story. Dressed in pale pink garments, her sorrowful spirit is said to wander the royal quarters searching for a lost love. Visitors have described a faint scent of roses appearing suddenly in empty rooms, followed by the brief glimpse of a woman drifting through the corridor before dissolving into mist. And sometimes the hauntings grow louder. Late at night, people claim to hear the rhythmic march of soldiers in the courtyards below, boots striking stone, commands shouted into the darkness. Yet when anyone goes to investigate, the courtyards stand completely empty, as if the castle is replaying echoes of centuries of battles, sieges, and royal intrigue that refuse to fade away. 14. Skibo Castle, Sutherland. Hidden among forests and overlooking the waters of the Dornoch Firth, Skibo Castle appears serene and majestic. Its tall turrets, sweeping lawns, and ancient stone walls make it look like the perfect Highland retreat. Today, it is known as the private home of the exclusive Carnegie Club. But long before its modern luxury, the castle gathered darker legends. One of the most chilling stories centers on the ghost of a Victorian nanny. According to local folklore, a young nanny once cared for several children in the castle during the 19th century. One stormy evening, tragedy struck near the shoreline of the estate. The children disappeared into the dark waters, some say while playing near the Firth. Others whisper of an accident during a nighttime walk. Overcome with grief and guilt, the nanny supposedly took her own life soon afterward. Staff and guests have long reported strange occurrences in the castle's nursery wing. Late at night, faint creaking sounds are sometimes heard, like a rocking cradle moving slowly back and forth. Yet when anyone enters the room, the cradle stands completely still. Some witnesses claim to hear soft crying, as if a woman is mourning somewhere deep within the castle. Another spirit often associated with Skibo is the White Lady. She is said to appear along the castle grounds, especially near the older stone pathways and gardens. Dressed in pale clothing, the silent figure is sometimes seen gazing out toward the water of the Firth before fading into the mist that drifts across the estate. Adding to the unease are rumors of hidden passages within the castle walls, secret corridors built during earlier centuries. According to legend, strange whispers and childlike footsteps have occasionally been heard coming from these sealed spaces, though no one can ever locate their source. Whether these stories are echoes of tragic history or simply Highland folklore carried through generations, Skibo Castle remains one of Scotland's most mysterious estates, where the quiet beauty of the landscape contrasts sharply with the sorrowful spirits said to linger there. 15. Knock Castle, Isle of Skye. On the rugged western edge of the Isle of Skye stand the weathered remains of Knock Castle, once a stronghold of the powerful Clan MacDonald of Sleat. Today the ruins look peaceful, stone walls wrapped in moss, seabirds circling above, and the distant sound of waves breaking against the cliffs. But local legend claims the castle holds one of the most disturbing curses in the Highlands. Hidden within the castle for centuries was said to be a human skull, known in folklore as the Screaming Skull. According to the tale, the skull belonged to a man who was betrayed and murdered by the castle's former occupants during a violent clan feud. Before dying, he supposedly swore that his spirit would never leave the castle. From that night onward, the skull was said to emit chilling screams if it was ever moved or disturbed. Several stories claim that whenever the skull was removed from the castle, disaster soon followed. Owners supposedly fell into madness, families collapsed into conflict, or sudden misfortune struck the estate. The only way to quiet the curse, according to legend, was to return the skull to its original resting place within the castle. Even today, locals speak of strange sounds carried on the wind across the ruins. Late at night, visitors have claimed to hear piercing wails echoing through the crumbling towers like a banshee crying out across the hills. Others report seeing shadowy figures moving among the broken walls, ghostly warriors appearing briefly in the moonlight before vanishing again. These apparitions are believed to be the restless spirits of clansmen from ancient battles between rival Highland families. Some witnesses describe seeing them replaying sword fights silently in the courtyard, as if the castle itself is trapped in a loop of its violent past. Whether legend or imagination, Knock Castle remains one of the eeriest ruins on the Isle of Skye, where the wind through the stones sometimes sounds uncannily like a distant scream. The stories we heard tonight may sound like legends, but every castle on this list has centuries of history behind it, and sometimes history leaves behind echoes we can't quite explain. For me, that's what makes these places so fascinating. They remind us that the past might still be closer than we think. If you ever had the chance to visit one of these castles, would you dare to stay the night? Let me know in the comments. I always enjoy reading your thoughts. And if you like exploring mysterious places like this, you're always welcome to join me again in the next video.